This is another podcast episode brought to you by Oliver Adams. Most people call me the coach. Today I have with me a good friend, Richard Smith III. Now, when you start talking about the third, you know you're going back in time just a little bit. But Richard, we want to say thank you for coming out, my friend.
Oh, thank you for inviting me out. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Listen, I know a lot of people want to get into the topic talking about antique dealerships or antique sales folks or antique collectors, more importantly. And you're going to shine light in that particular industry that looks like it was dying off for a minute, huh?
It was, in fact, dying off because as the real estate market goes, so does the antique, especially the luxury antique market.
Okay.
It goes as well.
So in that luxury antique space, is it based upon the economy? Is it based upon disposable income, or just people who have a desire to collect things?
A combination of all of that, Oliver. Primarily because within the antique furniture business, for one example, when you have disposable income, you can buy these McMansions, as we used to refer to them as, the bigger homes. They can accommodate the larger pieces that I would typically import over from Europe. Okay, sideboards, buffets, pieces like that, armoires, and they were really designed for much larger homes and larger rooms.
Well, in today's world, they're building these homes so small, you can barely get a king-size bed in them.
Right, exactly right. And so the luxury market that came over from Europe that I was dealing with primarily, it kind of went by the wayside as well. Okay, but it is in fact coming back.
So let me ask you a question. So for my audience, I got some folks that's in the real estate business, like I always tell you, but just general folks that's all around the world. I've met a lot of people who have different requirements and needs in their life. Explain to us the fundamentals of antiques and what kind of value it may hold over time, or how you want to explain it.
Okay. Well, it's just dependent upon what it is that you desire, what you like. Beyond everything, just collect. If you're going to be a collector, buy and or collect something that you're enthusiastic about. First and foremost, I don't care if it's antiques, if it's art, if it's antique cars, if it's jewelry, make certain that you love it. Because during that period of time that you're encompassing and living with these antique pieces that you collected, you've enjoyed them over a period of time. And then consequently, if you should be desirous of actually selling later down the road, it's internal wealth. That's what you're building, internal wealth.
Nice.
So you had the beauty of enjoying it, living with it during a period of time, and you can barter with it. You can use it as money. Primarily currency, the true currency, like gold and antiques were the kind of things collected over time. Exactly.
And when they collected these things, there was always an appraisal and evaluation process involved. So how would that, let's take me back in time. You started somewhere, in the 80s?
I did in the 80s after I left corporate America.
Can you tell us a little bit how you got started in the business?
I kind of fell into the business, to be honest with you, but I was with corporate America, and beyond the situation, beyond my control, I opted to actually go into the antique business. But over the weekend, I made that decision because I left corporate America on Friday. And then on Sunday, I decided I was going to go into the antique business. I'm sitting there thinking about my grandfather, who basically raised me. And he always told me, he said, son, whatever it is you do in life, make certain that you enjoy it because you'll never have to go to work a day in your life.
Nice.
Right?
We hear that today.
We hear
people
it today.
say that, but they don't understand what that possibly means.
It's so valuable. It's so valuable. So at the time, I was sitting there on my sofa, and I said, well, I love the bass fish. I was tournament bass fisherman, right?
I remember.
I love to do that, but I said, I don't think I can make a living at this point in time in my life doing that. And I looked around my home, and I had accumulated a lot of antique pieces over the years.
But you weren't a hoarder.
No, I wasn't a hoarder, not at all. But my antique furniture that went into my house kind of was apropos because the home was built in 1926. It was old English Tudor. And the long and short of it is, I did not want to bastardize the house by modern or contemporary. So I purchased things that were suitable
to the house.
And I looked around my home and I said, oh my God, I said, you know what? I think I'm a better salesperson than anybody who ever sold me a piece of antiques. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to the antique business.
I love it.
And so I did just that. So that was in June. So from June to September, I scoured the countryside. I hit auction houses. I hit a lot of different estate sales and what have you. I visited, I learned as much as I possibly could. Then I found a location on Labor Day weekend is the day I opened up.
Nice. So you like acquired an eye for something unique, or how did you go about that process?
Well, I always loved architecture.
Right.
And so architecture and antique furniture, especially when you get into European antique furniture, you know, it's like Louis the 15th, 16th, George the 2nd and 3rd, Duncan Fife, this, that, and the other. They all had their different styles. So it's very similar to a piece of architecture. You know, so I like history, and then architecture was kind of hand in hand. But I grew up, my grandmother had, we just had old furniture. But at the same time, it was associated with Duncan Fife, Sheraton. And I remember that from years ago. And so I kind of reverted back to it. That's what happened.
So you kind of like, through your family that were collecting stuff just to live.
Just to live.
They possibly didn't know what they was collecting, but somehow in the process, you were seeing the uniqueness of the craft, the design, and things of that nature.
Well, my grandmothers on both sides, my maternal and paternal grandparents, right? We had what we had. Now we were middle class, right? A lower middle class, if you will. But once you felt like you arrived to a certain status, you bought yourself Duncan Fife or Sheraton style, right? Mahogany.
Right, mahogany.
Yeah, mahogany.
We might not know Duncan Fife.
Well, that's a style.
That's a style.
But it's mahogany wood. It was rich, it's brown, you know, and it's for everlasting, it's timeless. And so that's what we grew up with.
Okay.
And I remember as a child, it was 4 of us. And by the time I got to be 9 or 10 years old, we as kids had destroyed the chairs to the Duncan Fife set. So my grandmother, she said, she asked me, she said, you want to go down shopping with me downtown? I need to get some chairs to replace what y'all tore up, basically.
Right.
And
that's
I
what
said,
y'all do when you're kids.
Yeah. I said, okay, grandmama. So I went downtown. I mean, we must have walked around for hours. We went from store to store to store. I had no idea who this Duncan Fife guy was, but by the end of the day, I wanted to kill him. She walked me to death.
Oh, so you're young, but she's grandmom, and you're walking, and you're the one tired?
Yeah, well, I'm tired from the standpoint, I'm not interested in this.
Right.
You know, I'm just going along for maybe for lunch or something from my grandmother. She's going to treat me to lunch. But, you know, as the years progressed, kind of fast forward, Duncan Fife kind of resonated with me. And as I opened up my first store, I had a plethora of Duncan Fife. Made a living on it initially for the first couple of years. And then I kind of elevated my inventory. By
So the exposure was the buy-in.
Right. That was
being around unique, valuable things. And you know what I've learned? That a lot. I'm from Philadelphia. And I know you're from Detroit. And we'll talk about your neighbor in a little bit. But a lot of folks don't know, depending on what region in the world you came from and how long your parents had occupied property, there may be valuable assets, antiques, in and around the property. So before you stop and just say, you know what, let's have a yard sale, let's get rid of this kind of stuff, you might want to pause for a second and maybe connect with a guy like Richard and say, okay, then before I get rid of this, does this have any value? So how do you, or what would you recommend to people who's been living in homes that's like pre-60s, pre-70s, that maybe has been in the family?
I would say take a pause. Learn what's there, you know, within your family. Listen to your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and your uncles, and understand the reason why they held on to various things. Because if nothing else, it has some intrinsic value to it.
I like that.
Intrinsic value. And, you know, sometimes you can't pay for that, but at the same time, it probably has some monetary value as well. And educate yourself, learn before you throw it in the curb.
Right.
Because I have been in a situation or 2 or 3 where the person didn't want to have anything to do with dead people's furniture or old furniture or this antique or that antique or this piece of artwork. And as it turned out, it was pretty valuable.
Nice.
And I made the purchase and put it in my store and flipped it, and it, you know.
It's money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, I don't like talking about people's money, but we were talking previous to this interview, and you were showing me this book that you collected everything in. And you was telling me the story about how you had a piece of antique in your house, and it accidentally fell.
Oh yeah.
And when it fell, it broke, and you had to go back into your records because you had to do an insurance claim. Give us that story, because I thought, to me, that was an inspirational story.
Well, for me, what happened over 25 years ago, I actually purchased a bust, a carved African-American head that was done by a world-renowned artist, Charles White.
Gotcha.
Okay. And to sit that bust on, I actually made a purchase of an Italian marble pedestal from 1860. And at the time, those two pieces collectively, between the two, were about $6,500. And accidentally, I knocked both of the pieces over. They cracked, they broke. I found my receipts. I filed a claim. After going through a couple of different gyrations, they opted to go ahead and pay me full replacement value.
Nice.
And I'm talking about after 25 years, it had gone from $6,000 over pretty close to $30,000.
Nice, nice.
Right.
And I'm noticing while you're doing it, I'm looking at this Pappy Van Winkle here, and I put this here, has nothing to do with antique, but to me, you know, I got a good friend named Ray, we call him Big Play, shout out to Big Play.
Right.
He gave me this as a gift, and he said, whatever you do, just understand that this is a special gift, Oliver. So while you're going like this, and you're explaining the value of the two place setting, I'm saying to myself, should I move this on over here? Because if he accidentally hit this, I hate to put the receipt on it, but I'm gonna need to put a purchase on it.
Right. I know that can be pricey. The longer you keep it, the pricier it becomes. It appreciates.
Yeah.
It
So I don't know.
Right.
You know, I think I might put this back here.
Okay.
Just in case you get excited.
Right.
We're gonna lean that right there.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to buy a bottle of that today.
For those who don't know, you don't know. But those who do know, check this out. There it is. Look like we segued from our segment, but we didn't. We're talking about things of value. The longer I keep that bottle and don't touch it, the more appreciation value that it has.
Okay, very similar to collectibles.
You was giving me this, you showed me this book, and what really interests me, remember I was just saying, I don't like to get into people's money, but you were showing me 6 months worth of receipts. I would consider those to be not invoices, but paid purchases. And you were showing me like nothing less than $50,000. It was like 50, watch this, Oliver. In the same month, you showed me a $250,000 worth of purchase orders from your store over time. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a little more than just a hustle. This is something that you have to, like you say, love. Share with us the kind of receipts or the value that you came in contact with by selling antiques.
Well, some of my clientele had disposable income beyond belief to me at the time. You know, I had no idea. But once I got into it and elevated my inventory, for an example, I had clients to come in, customers, that would spend $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 at the drop of a hat and wouldn't give it a second thought. And this would happen repeatedly during the course of a given week and or month.
Right.
So they had an appreciation for it. They had disposable income. They had a home that they needed to embellish and furnish. And so that's what they did. You know, when I tell you that I went in business after leaving corporate America, and I opened up on Labor Day weekend, the second person through my door, and I'll never forget her. And I don't know if she'll ever see this or not, but this has been years ago. Her name was Phyllis Whitehead. I'll never forget her. Platinum, blonde, very well put together. She said, Richard, she said, I'm doing a real estate office. Coldwell Banker by chance. I need 20 chairs. I need a banquet table. I need a credenza and a sideboard for this particular office. She dropped $40,000 on me the first day that I opened. For that.
And so if that had to be valued $40,000 back, what, 80s or the 90s?
In the 80s.
So in the 80s, that $40,000, what would be that value today for that same set? Plus
oh my goodness, you're probably talking upwards of $200,000, $220,000, $230,000, because quite naturally antiques appreciate, and the value of a dollar has just done that. I mean, it's appreciated. So in today's value, probably in the neighborhood of about $2 $250. And I'm just guessing. Easy. But what was interesting though, right around that same time, being from Detroit, you know, I didn't necessarily know him personally, but we would travel in the same circle. Sometimes like the Temptations and Smokey and Marvin Gaye, you would see them all over town because at the time they weren't necessarily getting paid a lot of money, so they had to live among common man. Okay. So they were all in our neighborhood. So we would see them at the grocery store and playing the numbers, the lottery and all of that. So I got to know a prolific writer from Motown. And he came in and he purchased one day about $60,000 to $65,000. Then he came back the following day and purchased another 20. And I just wanted to see how the guy was living. He wasn't too far from my home, I went around there with the moving company, and much to my surprise, I saw a stereo system that I had become familiar with. I had invested, because it was a true investment, in 3 pieces years prior to, but he had 11 pieces of this stereo equipment. And he said, Richard, you know what this is? You know, and he was kind of surprised because most people wouldn't. It's the creme de la creme of stereo equipment. It's called Macintosh. It's like the Rolls Royce of stereo equipment. He had 11 pieces. So the next day he asked me if I had any interest in buying it. I said, I'm just a small businessman. I can ill afford to buy that. And I said, if I had that type of money to invest, you know what I would do? I would put it in my inventory so I could, sell. He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Okay. I don't mind talking the numbers because that's what this is all about, right?
That's what this is all about.
Okay, he was a little eccentric, and he offered the 11 pieces of Macintosh equipment to me for $10,000, and I offered him $9,000, and I immediately, once he accepted, I closed my store down. I went and got a cashier's check. I had my movers move it. Do you have any idea what that stereo equipment was worth?
No, I have no clue.
Over $100,000.
And he gave it to you for 10?
10.
He was looking out for you.
Well, I call it a blessing or a favor.
A blessing. It must have been a blessing.
It was a real blessing. It was a real blessing. He had
to know the value.
He knew the value. But let me just digress just a tad bit. Okay, because Berry Gordy was not paying these people, okay, from Motown like he should have. And so they would get $500, $1,000 for a hit song. This particular guy, he just passed away about a year or so ago. Some of you never heard of him. His name was Barrett Strong. Barrett Strong wrote, I heard it through the grapevine, Papa was a Rolling Stone, I wish it would rain, and so on and so forth, right? And but he really didn't start receiving any residuals and any true monetary benefit from all of those songs he wrote until those Raisins came out with that commercial. I heard it through the grapevine.
So the what we call those auto tunes or some form of small commercialing.
Then he started getting residuals from that. And they played for years throughout the country on every network. I heard it through the grapevine. So he shared with me one of his residual checks for the month, over $150,000. Easy. And he also shared with me, he said, Richard, I've never received money like this. I don't know how to deal and handle it. So he knew the value of the stereo equipment, but he told me because he had a studio not too far from his home.
He didn't need it.
He didn't use it. He wanted the space, and so he sold it to me.
You know what's really interesting, and I'm not going to take away from the story, but it's in the same category.
Okay.
I was out eating lunch on Friday, this past Friday, with a friend. And we was at this new restaurant on the south side of town. It's called Sweet Auburn Barbecue. Right? And we're sitting down eating, so me and my friend was with me. We looked at the bartender and was like, yo, she should not be here. She was absolutely gorgeous. Like, why are you here? You don't even fit in this whole city. You are just too gorgeous. So we started talking with her, and she says to us that I'm a part of the movie industry. And in the movie industry, there's a current strike going on. And in this current strike, and she says to me, she says, if you ever want a toy, Now is the time to purchase toys from people in the music industry, in the movie industry, because they're not getting paid right now. So the circumstance surrounding what they've got going on, these folks purchase all of these things.
Absolutely.
That to them at that time, they had the disposable income, but now they don't. So even herself, she said, I'm bartending to make some additional money because the people that would normally pay me a certain stipend of money can't afford me right now. But I got to stay afloat until this Teamster union or whatever the unions work out the wrinkles. So she said, I heard about you, Coach. I've seen some of your marketing material. I don't think you know me, but I've seen you. And I'm like, whoa, am I some kind of like logo dude or something?
Yes, you are.
But at the end of the day, she was like, if you look, do you need a bike? Do you need a motorcycle? Do you need anything like that that might seems to be disposable purchase, but right now required? I said, you know what? I never thought about it. But listening to you now and talking to the audience, if you know somebody that's in the movie and film industry that might have been doing some of the things you talked about, like the gentlemen back in the Motown days that have these $10,000 items that could be valued at $100,000, that may be a way for you to reach out. If you're interested in becoming a collector or an antiques person and you had a passion, I'm pretty sure at the end you're going to give us some information for folks that be able to follow you. Sure. But do you feel what I'm trying to say?
Oh, absolutely, because, aside from that, for an example, in reference to what you're saying, I used to collect cars, antique cars. And the era in which I came up, it was muscle cars. And I'm from Detroit, so it's Corvettes, it's Mustangs, Shelbys, this, that, and the other. So I collected. And, I had a little small stable of cars, and I wanted to embellish my antiques, my antique store. No longer do I feel comfortable going around to estate sales and this, that, and the other and finding pieces. I want to go over to Europe and import containers back. And that's where I took my business. That's where I took my business, right? So I had a toy, that I wanted to sell. I purchased from a collector at $30,000. It was a 1967 big block Corvette. Purchased it for $30,000, drove it for about a year and a half, had it in various antique shows, car shows, and took it to a guy in Napoleon, Ohio, sold it for $65,000, took that money and went to Europe, and the rest is history because I was able to take my business to a different level.
I like how you would flip the money.
Oh, that was my thing. I didn't tell you about the stereo equipment. The one that I bought from the guy?
Yeah,
I held on. Yeah, oh yeah, man. I held on to it for probably about 8 months.
Right.
And I put it on eBay.
Right, back in the day.
Back in the day when eBay was in its infancy. Right. I learned how to put it. Initially, I was just buying off of eBay. I said, let me flip the script. Okay, so I learned how to write HTMLs. You had to actually write programs to get them on there, right? And I put that Macintosh system on there, sold it for $54,000.
$54,000.
Yes, sir.
And for those who don't know, he was showing me receipts. I mean, the book go on and on and on. So I'm not, I'm kind of not, not bragging on you, but I'm listening to you, and I always like to make sure that my guest that's speaking, make sure there's some validity to what they're saying. Right. And when you showed me that, you didn't have to, but when you showed me, I'm like, yo, if a person is interested in taking a look at that, because back in the day, it was eBay.
It was eBay.
Today, you got Facebook Marketplace, you have Amazon, you have so many different ways. You can e-commerce, things that you might capture or find of value. And for those who may not be working right now, but you have time, could you invest some time in looking for antiques so that you might be able to position yourself to be able to acquire that and then turn around in a short period of time and make a profit? I think that would be a pretty good lead generating process for somebody that needs to make money, but they gotta love it.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Otherwise, it becomes drudgery, and you're not going to last too very long doing that if it's drudgery. Yeah. If it's really just a job. The vast majority of people who know me and knew me for from back in the day and know me for any period of time know I sell things. Whatever it is, I'll sell it.
I sell things.
I sell things. I've got a nickname called Sell a Lot.
Sell a lot.
Sell a lot. But so I may not hold on to it very long. If in fact I can make some money on it, I will. Right.
You know, in today's world, they use that for crypto, right?
Right. Exactly.
You know, you get in at the right time. How long do you hold it? And some people don't understand the value of time, and time is always the judge of value. I'm assuming.
Right. Well, it is, but you have to buy right. You know, you make your money when you purchase, not necessarily when you sell.
So buy low.
Buy low and sell high.
So that rule never changed.
Never has. It never has. It never has changed. But you need to buy right.
Now,
you know, because everything that's old is not valuable.
Ooh, say that again?
Everything that's old is not necessarily valuable.
So how do you distinguish between old and value?
Well, follow the trends. That's where the education comes in.
Gotcha.
Know what's out there and available and what's collectible and what people are buying. Know what the market is. Now, years ago, before anybody became familiar with it, I mean, I always, you know, just sought for knowledge. I just wanted knowledge, you know. I guess my grandfather sort of instilled that in me, you know. But I used to pick up various magazines like Architectural Digest and Veranda and this, that, and the other. But there's one magazine that I absolutely just fell in love with, and I would just get a plethora of information on what was going on in the world, what was collectible, what was the best of this. And that was called the ROBB Report, ROBB Report. And even back then, that magazine, when everything else was $1.25 for a magazine, it was like $20. Today, I think it's $35, $40 an issue. But it has virtually everything in there, from cars to cigars to wine to champagne.
You collect all those things too?
No, I don't collect those things necessarily.
But you're aware of them?
I'm aware of them because of this publication that I've always, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so watches, cigars, cars, wine, champagne, virtually everything imaginable people collect, yachts. You know, and all of these things are included in there, so it would give you an idea where the market was going.
Appreciate that referral. You know, people got to know where to start somewhere.
Right.
Maybe a publication like
publication
that.
Like
wet
that.
their whistle.
Yep.
So before we close out, you know, living in Detroit, and everything's big in Detroit, not just in Texas, but the houses in Detroit used to be massive, right?
Yes.
I know you was a real estate broker. You had a few companies and a few agents, but you was talking about your neighbor one day, and when God rest her soul, and it hit you hard. We was talking when you found out that your past neighbor, which is a celebrity, I'll let you share your story, that passed away because all the things she did for the neighborhood. You want to share?
Aretha Franklin.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking Aretha Franklin.
Yeah,
right?
That was your neighbor you told me about.
That was my neighbor, and she lived less than a block away. She moved in after I had already acquired my property. But it wasn't uncommon necessarily once again, for us to see celebrities like the Four Tops, the Temptations. Marvin Gaye lived around the corner. Before I purchased that home years ago on the golf course, I lived, you know, in just a modest two-family flat, and William Guest of the Pips was 2 doors down. So it was pretty much commonplace, but you know, all of them provided an anchor for the city of Detroit.
That's right.
You know, they really did, and I was really kind of taken aback and saddened about the death of Aretha, but no more than some of the other celebrities have gone on. You know, like there's only one Temptation left, there's only one Four Tops left. You know, Gladys is still here with Bubba, but the other two are gone.
Gotcha.
You know, so those are some people that you felt like you had a close relationship with, even if you didn't do anything but just admire them from afar. You waved at them from a distance. You didn't necessarily disturb them. Because we saw them so often, we didn't seek for autographs.
Yeah, that wasn't it.
No, and back in the day, there was no selfies. You know, so it's all here. You know,
it's all in the memory.
That's right. But I really love Detroit, and it's just like you and probably Philly. Right. I mean, it's innate.
Yeah.
Same thing with Detroit for me, you know.
So, you know, a lot of people have pride in their city, pride in their town, pride on where they're from.
Right.
We're here in Atlanta, and, you know, that means we migrated here, and, you know, we meet people from all over the world. The one thing about Atlanta currently is a melting pot. It's a place where people could come, and regardless to what they were doing, they can almost replicate this here, or in this aspect here, without any complications. So, but I appreciate you sharing some of those stories. Now, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you regarding how to get started in this, would you be available? Maybe share with them your contact information, such as social or maybe just email or website.
Right, absolutely. Well, you can always reach me at KingRichard344@gmail.com.
Say that one more time.
KingRichard, the number 3 RD44, my favorite number, at gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Right.
So that's old school for you. When they give you the email address, they don't give you the website. I mean, they prefer to be contacted that way. Am I correct?
Well, you can also contact me at Third Rock Realty at WordPress.com.
So you're going there with it.
Right.
Third Rock Realty at .wordpress.
Right.
Okay. So we appreciate you, King Richard.
Well, thank you, sir.
The information you shared was like invaluable.
I hope so.
Do you want to leave us with a tip before you go?
There's just a multitude of ways out there that you can actually make money, additional money. You can turn your passion into a vocation. But once again, please love it, and you'll never have to go to work a day in your life.
And we appreciate that.
Thank you.
My name is Oliver. They call me Coach. You can catch me on oliveradams.com or any Oliver Adams Coach on any of the social platforms. We appreciate y'all guys tuning in to Talk Your Truth Thursday. This is another podcast episode. We hope that you're enjoying it. And if you are, please like, comment, and share. Because if you don't share this content, I know eventually, like Antiques, it's going to hit. But it feels better if it hit right now. Right. I'm like, dude, I can hold on to this for a long period of time, but I prefer to hit it now. So do me a favor. After you finish looking at the podcast, go ahead and send it to somebody you know so we get that likes and viewership up so we can get probably just a little more in tune with a variety of different people. Rich, again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Appreciate you.
Enjoyed it.